Really, what's going on, folks? This is Matt here for Talking Linux Tech and Game, where this is a fusion of Linux technology and gaming. And we are here with actually somebody I really like their content of and for, and that is Nova Spirit. Um, Lots of Linux related content, really good content, honestly. And while I'm a douchebag, I totally own that. He doesn't come across as a know-it-all like certain other roughly similarly sized YouTube channels that relate to Linux. And yeah, take that shade wherever you want to throw it. Really, what it boils down to, though, is because I recently did a reaction video about somebody making the switch to Linux, and they went to Linux Mint. This popped up on my feed, and it's the wording that I find interesting. Replacement. I want to see what he says, because I have a very strong take on when I see this, and we'll get into that. And I'm not going to be doing, people like, oh, don't do personal pot shots and all the other stuff. Generically, I don't. It's only when you're kind of a douche anyway that I'll take personal pot shots and call you mean, nasty names that people think is toxic and whatever. And if that's not your type of content, go find your rainbows, hugs, and unicorns elsewhere, because it ain't fucking here. So let's get into what Nova Spirit Tech's take on is Linux Mint, the Windows replacement.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Don here from Nova Spirit Tech, and welcome back to the channel. And with all the talks about Windows 12 going into a subscription model, there's no better time than now to switch over to Linux. So we're going to be checking out Linux Mint 21.2. So let's get started. Now, Linux Mint's been around for quite some time, and it's one of the Linux operating systems that I would recommend to someone who would be switching from Windows to Linux. Just because of how it's designed and laid out, it's very familiar to you. It's not like you have to learn a completely different desktop. So we're going to look into it now. So
as far as the desktop in and of itself, Cinnamon isn't for me. I will be the first to admit. What I will say is between Budgie and Cinnamon, those two DEs are basically what GNOME should be designed as. It doesn't overwhelm me with choices, but it gives you, well, redundantly choices. Something that GNOME as a project just doesn't like in general. So I do find them to be the better alternatives when it comes to GTK stuff, when it comes to recommending them to Windows users, because despite my personal issues with how Linux Mint as a project is run, I do understand that the UI and that stuff does really cater to the Windows paradigm and user. And if you just look at the way it's designed in general, it's got that very Windows-esque look to it, more of a Windows, I'd probably say a Windows 10-ish vibe more than anything else. The Windows paradigm gets thrown at Plasma a lot, or KDE, whatever you want to call it. Gets thrown that direction a lot, but really when you look at it, Plasma's not designed not designed at all like Windows. Once you really get into it, just everything from like the settings menus and everything else. Mint tends to be a little more like UI wise and just kind of application wise, a little more familiar to Windows users. So I'm not going to slag on that too much.
First time you install Linux Mint, you will be granted with this welcome window. You can follow the steps and go through all the processes to configure it the way you want. So you can change the desktop colors. You can create snapshots with their program. You can set up all that stuff for you. Now, there are a couple of things you could do, which is like dark mode, light mode. Now, this is a mix mode. So you could choose between what you want. I would stick to what you're familiar with. I like the dark mode, so I'm going to stick with dark mode for now. But yeah, you do get that option. If you want to change the accent colors, you can as well. So you can see this is changing to blue. Green is the Linux Mint color, even though they changed the wallpaper from being green, which is like everybody's like complaint, you could say. But I do like this new background, the gray background over here. You can also change it to, like I said, anything you want. In advanced settings.
So as someone who definitely prefers dark modes on, well, anything from phones to tablets to desktops, the green background. They usually had some type of like dark kind of background with the Linux Mint logo. It was usually what they did for the most part. Or if they did ship a green background, it was more shaded green kind of deals. But yeah, like I'm with Nova Spirit here. The dark is better, because flat out. So as far as my actual usage of Linux Mint, I have not used Linux Mint in probably, it's been a long time. And a lot of that, it's just personal preference. It's not anything against Mint. No, it's something against Mint, but that's more of a personal preference about how the projects run more than like from a usage perspective. So overall, I like seeing all these kind of little, kind of snapshot first steps kind of applications. You see them in things like Garuda, you see them in things like Linux Mint, Ubuntu Budgie, all that kind of like these welcome screen kind of apps. I really do like that. I know KAOS has it as well, which is it's called Captain, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've used Chaos, so. But these little kind of apps and stuff and the first steps to get going are super important for better out of the box experience, better first impressions for the OS. And that does really matter.
Settings, you could change your mouse pointers, different icons, or add your own depending on what you like. Instead of changing just the icons, you could change everything else. Like the menu here, the applications. If you don't like the mouse cursor, you change that mouse cursor to something else as well. So there is a lot of things you could do to customize it, but it won't really change too much compared to other Linux distros where you could completely change how everything looks. You can definitely do backups and snapshots with their Timeshift program, similar to what you would do with System Restore. Driver Manager as well, if you have an NVIDIA graphic card, you need to install drivers for that. And one of my favorite things about this, actually two things, is their Update Manager. In their Update Manager, you can actually set everything up to be automatically updating everything that you want. So if I go over to Edit, Preferences, I could go over to Automation, and you see how I have everything checked off. It'll just automatically apply updates for me, so I don't have to keep worrying about or waiting until the updates stack to like 50 things I have to update. It'll automatically update it as I go. What's cool is that the Update Manager also updates Flatpak packages as well. So you don't have to go digging for Flatpaks to see if you need to update them. Again, you could go through all this menu and check it out yourself. They have documentations for everything.
So again, small little touches like that do matter. Most people, most generic users who like this is touted to, it's not going to matter. Like if it's a Deb or a Flatpak or a Snap or an app image or whatever. But the fact that the package manager will take care of that stuff in the background, not your problem. You don't have to worry about it. All that stuff is fantastic. That makes for a better overall user experience instead of having to do it yourself. And I'm saying this as someone who uses, Garuda, which sometimes I wonder how many I can go 2 or 3 days without updating. And, you got like a gig and a half to download for updates. So it's all relative, depending on your distro, but I do get it. So I understand it. And the updating of Flatpaks is nice. So kudos to that.
You won't really get lost in this operating system. Now, again, this just looks similar to Windows. You know where the buttons are to minimize, maximize, and close. Your start menu is very similar as well. You have all your programs. What's cool is that you can actually resize the start menu if you need to. I could go this way as well. And they have quick shortcuts on the left side that you can change, and then all the programs that it comes with. Now, by default, it comes with actually a decent amount of programs that you wouldn't just normally use, alternative to what you would have in Windows. Like Pix is to organize your images. And this thing is, I don't have any pictures in this computer right now, but this is actually a very good program to organize all your photos. If you needed to, you could go into Office and you have your LibreOffice. So you have Excel, Word, everything is all in here. Internet, you have your Thunderbird Mail, so you need your mail client. They already have everything installed. I installed Steam on here as well, but it's like one click to install everything. So to show you guys, I'm going to go into their software manager or App Center or whatever they call it these days. And I actually really like their software manager because now they actually show a lot of the Flatpak top programs on the list. So as you can see, this has Visual Studio Code, FlatHub, and it's only a 3.3 star. Slack, so they actually show stuff from their Ubuntu repository, but also show stuff from FlatHub. And again, you could search everything. So
something like that, where it just gives you the box and the source, just little stuff like that. It to somebody not technical, it's not really going to matter, but for somebody who cares, it's going to matter, and it doesn't get in the way. So props to them for that. I know I'm not sure if because Mint does a lot of Mint things as far as how they run their system. So I'm not sure if this is specific to Mint or if this is like some type of branch fork of GNOME software or GNOME software or the Software Center or whatever the hell they're calling it nowadays. Or like if this is using like the elementary stuff. I don't honestly know because I'm not a Mint guy, but just talking UI, UX kind of stuff, it really does help advanced users because like, oh, I don't want that particular app from FlatHub. I don't want the Flatpak. I want the native package format. That's nice to be able to have, but it doesn't get in the way of kind of general usage for new users.
Let's go Flatseal. That's a program I highly recommend to install if you're using FlatHub, and it's called Flatseal. This manages permissions for all Flat packages, and you can see it comes up. That means it's going to be installable. It also works very fast, and if you do need multiple versions of stuff, say like Steam, it will show different versions. Like you have one for FlatHub, then you have one from this one, then you have a Steam installer. If I want to install Wine so I could run Windows programs, I could install multiple versions, either Wine from FlatHub or just Wine itself. So the software manager is top-notch. It's really, really good. It actually finds a lot more programs than a lot of other software packages that I've used before. Now, heading into the file browser, you guys are probably familiar with this as well. It looks very, very similar to what Windows would offer. And going into different files, you could just double click, pictures as well. I don't have anything in pictures, but yes, you could see that everything just operates normally like you would. And you could change the layout of it if you want to look the way you used to. And if you want, again, you could change the look of it. Now, as far as settings goes, you do have a handful of settings that you can change. The theming part was what we were looking at before. And here, you could just change the style that you want easily. If you don't want to stay with Mint UI, effects, you could actually add and remove the reflex or the speed of the transaction. Backgrounds, this is the original Linux Mint background. You could change it back to this if you want. Again, it's so easy to navigate everything that you want. You're not really coming off confused into a different desktop like this. Now, this also does support tiling windows like this. So if you're familiar with this in Windows as well, you can actually just tile them each corner and pull them off. You still have the Alt tab to change between programs as well. And if you use the Windows key 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on how many things you have launched here, it will actually bring up the program. Let me close this out. Windows key 1, and it'll bring me File Manager. Windows key 2 will give me Firefox. So again, all the stuff that you are familiar with is also transferred over here and more. Now, the only downside to Linux Mint is that it's still running on an older Ubuntu, which is 22.04, which means if you got the latest graphic card or the latest drivers for something, it might not necessarily detect it because it's using an older system with an older kernel. So that might be the only downside that you run into if you are planning to install extremely new hardware.
Which he is not wrong. So, and he's, I would say probably, I don't want to call it bleeding edge hardware. I would call probably hardware that's been released maybe in the last 6 months, maybe a year. A year might be pushing that a little too far as like what is considered new because of the hardware enablement stack and stuff. But I would say if you are a bleeding edge tech person, might not be the best distro for you. However, on the same note, depending on the hardware and depending on the software that you use, because it's Ubuntu based, it's going to have generically the biggest round of like support around it. So it's relative depending on a lot of different situations. Generically for me, I generically tend not to recommend static releases if you're like a technophile or somebody that really likes tech. because you're not going to get the latest and greatest, and your experience with hardware specifically, if you're looking for the latest and greatest, isn't going to be great on a static release distro from, a year and a half ago, more or less. Again, hardware and stack, etc., but generically, it's still running older stuff. So it's a hit or miss. But overall, so far, I have no issues with his take on Mint.
But otherwise, because it's on 22.04, it's on long-term support or LTS. That means it's very stable. So that is it for me, guys. I do highly recommend Linux Mint if you're going to be switching from Windows to a Linux operating system. The transition between the two is very seamless. So I do highly recommend that. Now, I am checking out other operating systems that you can come off Windows into Linux, like Zorin OS or other ones like that. And I will be making videos of those as well. But yeah, if you have any questions about this, hit me up down in the comments below. If you guys have any operating systems that you want me to check out, let me know down in the comments below as well. If you guys are new to this channel, consider subscribing and also hit that bell notification icon so you know when the next video is going to be out. And I say in my nerd cave, hack till it hurts. Hey guys, what's going on? It's Don here from Nova Spirit Tech, and
oops. So overall, like, I don't. So the title is not exactly as it sounds. That the title was where I was going to be concerned. Is he considering it a replacement? He's talking about the ease of transitions, probably the barrier to entry, as it were, is going to be lower based on the simple fact that the paradigms are similar. And he's not wrong to an extent. But in order to fix a lot of the paradigm issues that people will still run into, unfortunately, is get them on applications where the OS doesn't matter. So if they're running, it doesn't matter. Insert Linux distro here. If you're the tech support, it don't really matter, honestly. But on the same note, it kind of does. So for me, Linux Mint is a totally fine alternative to Windows. It gives you a Windows-esque like experience, not one-to-one. Is it a replacement? It depends on how you're using the term replacement. I prefer the term alternatives as opposed to replacement, because replacement means something similar and it's just drop and go without like the learning curve. And people tend not to process that terminology quite as quickly. So when they do other things, though, like I'll say alternative so that they understand there's going to be a learning curve. Similar, but different still. It's like when you go from one job to another job, how they might do something at the other job that you are going to now might be similar to the one you left, but the way stuff is done, etc., is going to be different. So they do it in an alternative way or an alternate way, as opposed to replacing the way you know to do it. That's why I prefer the term alternative or alternate, or, as opposed to replacement. But besides, like, getting into the kind of the weeds of all that stuff, semantics and whatnot, I have no problem with his take on Mint. Again, not my distro choice, but doesn't mean I'm not going to not recommend it, because I just don't like how some things within Mint as a project is done. Doesn't matter what I want. It's matter just what the user wants. And that's what we tend to forget a lot. So props to Nova Spirit Tech, as always. Decently good content. Never really had a bad word to say about him. He's produces content that I like. I mean, it's not all geared to like my liking as far as like my areas of interest, but like if you want a tech YouTuber that is all over the map when it comes to tech, but it's a Linux, hard Linux lean, I can't think of many better people. I mean, maybe Wendell, but Nova Spirit Tech has been on here for a long time that I can remember. So props to you, dude. Always good content. And to the rest of y'all, what's your take? Linux Mint, good or bad? What's your personal opinion on it? And I will catch you guys on the next one. Comment, rate, subscribe, any Gala, Patreon, all that crap is down below in the description.